Okay, so the rise of English American sounding rappers from L-TIDO, Muggs, Proverb, Stogie T, Deleuze, all the way up to Nasty CA, Reese, and how that sound both elevated and damaged our rap culture. We're going to talk about history, we're going to talk about identity, we're going to talk about substance versus style, and most importantly, we're going to talk about how hip hop lost the streets. So let's go back to the early 2000s, right? South African hip hop wasn't the huge machine it is today. There were no streaming platforms, there was no TikTok, there was barely even industry support, right? Hip hop was underground. And when people did actually hear it, it sounded heavily American. We're talking about mugs, smooth delivery, punchline heavy, flow straight out of the East Coast, school type of thing, proverb, technical lyricism, complex rhyme scheme, sounded like a conscious Philadelphia rapper. L-TIDO, clean English delivery, swagger influence from like the American blog era, Stogie, Deleuze. Back then, that's what we thought hip hop was supposed to sound like. America was the blueprint, America was the standard. And South African rappers, I'd say, didn't yet have the confidence to sound like themselves, right? But here's the important part. Even though they sounded American, they still had to work very hard for that respect, right? Nothing was handed to them. They used to call them Mama Yo Yo. But people today forget how hard things were for that generation. There was no viral marketing. There was no playlist placements, no digital distribution, no internet clouds, no social media fame. If you wanted SA hip hop to succeed, you had to like physically build it, right? And these rappers performed at tiny campus shows, club appearances, rap battles, open mics. They sold CDs hand to hand. They drove province to province trying to get airplay. And because they had to fight for survival, they learned the most important lesson. If you want to resonate with South Africans, you must reflect South Africa. So even though they began with American cadence, over time they adjusted. The slang became more local, the references became more relatable, the beats slowly adopted local rhythms, the storytelling became more South African. They blended global influence with authentic identity. That balance is something the modern generation struggles with.
It's about 3 yellow bones, right? Not two. You've got
two and a singer.
Rest in peace.
Two and vocals.
Rest in peace, Luther.
Yeah. Oh, yes. There were four of them. Yeah.
Luther from Selima Tunzi Dugudu, who's had success as a TV host.
TV too, right?
Kid Star. Right?
Kid Star, baby.
You've got
Brenda
NES.
Fass's son.
Not
is
God.
in this group, bro.
Yeah, not God. Also, he's on fire with their market.
Fresh out of the US,
and he's
right?
dancing and he's
It's tippy toes.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard.
You've got the originator from POC Scheme, from Ishmael to Ismail, and then you've got the goddess's son.
Bro, that was a super group though.
Wow.
Like for real.
If there ever was one, it was that.
Let's focus on a specific artist. Let's just pick Deleuze, right? People today don't realize how close he came to actually never blowing up nationally, right? Deleuze is talented, but the truth is, without Josie, breaking through solo would have been almost impossible. Why? Because back then, SA didn't support the English rappers. Yo. Hip-hop wasn't mainstream. American accents were misunderstood. Industry gates were locked. Kwaito was dominating. House was dominating. The average listener didn't relate to suburban experiences. And when I said Nota, I wasn't taking a shot at people like Nota and Les, the Cheese Boys. They're important for actually providing these things to the people that didn't have in the game, right? If someone like someone from the hood, like a pro, didn't have a laptop, the Cheese Boys from the north side and all of that would supply these people with these laptops and all of that. These people physically built the game, right? And obviously, Josie gave Deleuze a brand, a national platform, a cultural position, a sound that blended hip-hop with African flavor, access to TV, radio, and mainstream audiences. But then a solo act with a fully American sound, it really had no chance. The country wasn't ready, the landscape wasn't ready, the culture wasn't ready. And he needed to, he needed a group to survive, if that's safe to say. And that shows just how different the grind was.
And for me, it's like, I know when I get my flowers, I get my flowers at that time. But other than that, like, I know what I've done. I'm very secure in myself. Shout out to all the Leos out there. Just by the way, yo, I see y'all lions, man. Fight the good fight.
We know that Proverb is a GOAT. We know that Proverb can lyrically rap. We know that Proverb he's a lyrical beast, right? But do y'all think Proverb would have been as big as he is today if he carried on rapping? Especially if he carried on rapping the way he rapped. Not that it's bad the way he rapped, but I mean, he was literally just saying that his royalty was R5.50 or something.
Asking myself, I have just spent 100,000 odd buying the masters. I've just gotten a quote of 150,000 rand to re-record this whole thing. My kids' fees are about 100,000 rand each at that time. And I'm thinking to myself, am I going to pay for something that I'm not likely to make a dime from, a cent from, or am I going to pay for my kids' school fees? And I tell you, Lemongs, that day was the crossroads. That day I made the decision that, man, I'm going to pay for my kids' school fees, and I haven't been back there since.
But anyway, fast forward to, let's say the mid-2010s, Nasty CA, Reese, The Wrecking Crew, the New Wave Kids. These artists entered an industry with, YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, social media, world-class studios, better connections, a stronger hip-hop fan base, international attention. That wasn't created by the new kids, by the way. Wasn't even created by the AKAs and Caspers. I mean, HP was going international before, come on, guys. But better technology, managers, stylists, PR teams. They didn't have to build anything from scratch. They inherited a culture that was already established, right? But here's where the problem came in. This generation wanted fame fast, expected the nation to understand them instantly, and when they don't, they blame it on the nation, like, oh, if I was from America, people would have understood me better. They didn't study the streets. You didn't study the provinces. You didn't understand the average South African listener and didn't push to actually connect with the entire country. They mistook English fluency for artistic depth. They mistook viral moments for impact. They mistook online hype for cultural presence. They didn't do the groundwork that the older generation was forced to do. This created a disconnect between them and actual South Africans. And here's the misconception that ruined the new era. People think South Africans hate English rap. That's a lie. South Africans hate MT rap. So not MT, like MT, EMPTY rap, right? They hate rap with we love MT rap, but anyway, they hate rap with no cultural weight. They hate rap that doesn't feel like them. Proof. AKA, a man who rapped 90% in English, but managed to be more South African than some who rap entirely in vernac. Why? Because AKA understood South African identity. The heartbreak, the culture, the way we talk, the humor, the cities, the township references, the mixing of languages, the spiritual undertones, the real life situations South Africans go through. It wasn't about the words, it was about the message. AKA was English, but his soul was South African. That's the difference. Now, let's get into the uncomfortable truth, right? While American-sounding rappers helped SA hip-hop evolve, I guess, they also damaged our cultural confidence. And here's how. One, they made American style the default. If you didn't rap like Americans, you weren't considered real hip-hop. And this excluded local voices, bro. In my time, they created generations of like copycats. Instead of finding a South African voice rapper, we having rappers who are trying to sound like a Lil Wayne, to sound like a Drake, to sound like the next Kendrick, J. Cole, Travis Scott. That's what we do as South Africans. We like, oh, Reese is the Kendrick of SA, Nasty is the Drake of SA, and Shane is the J. Cole of SA. Did you hear anyone say that about Zola, Pro, AKA, HP, Zaps, Amu? No one said things like this about people. No one said things like this. And the new generation alienated the audience. Hip-hop began to feel like a private, elite, cultural for a small group of people who understood American references. It's like, why you excluding the hood, bro? They taught young artists that sounding American is actually sounding better, and that destroyed our confidence. It killed creativity. It created clones. They separated hip hop from South Africa's cultural soul. And the average South African couldn't relate anymore. And when the culture loses the people, it dies. This is what happened in the late 2010s and early 2020s. Hip hop stopped feeling like a South African story. It felt like we were auditioning for America or something. So after 20 years of influence, imitation, identity struggle, battles, and generational gaps, what is the way forward? It's actually simple. South African hip hop must rediscover its South Africanness. I don't know if that makes sense, but not by abandoning English, not by copying Kwaito, not by forcing vernac, not by isolating new wave kids, but by allowing our true identity to breathe, our slang, our humor, our pain, our African stories, our social realities, our local production styles, our unique voices, our emotional honesty. And the culture is strongest when it reflects the people, not when it imitates another nation. So English rappers can still win, American flows can still win, global sounds can still win, but only if the soul remains South African. Because at the end of the day, authenticity will always, beat imitation. So that's all I gotta say. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, just join the conversation down in the comments. Peace.